$25,000. That's what a car that's stickered at $110,000 is selling for right now on CarMax. And the expensive part isn't the purchase price. It's the 12 months after. Here's what 3 generations of owners learned the hard way. The BMW 7 Series is BMW's flagship. It's the car where every new technology goes first. The first iDrive, the first gesture control, the first air suspension across the range. And because of that, it's also the car where every new technology fails first. The E65, the F01, the G11, 3 generations, 3 different flavors of the same fundamental problem. The purchase price drops like a stone, but the maintenance costs stay at sticker price. A car that costs someone $110,000 still needs a $110,000 parts catalog when something breaks. The difference is you bought it for $25,000, and that gap between what you paid and what it costs to keep running is where people get hurt. I haven't driven any of these, but I've read what hundreds of owners reported after driving them for years. Bimmerpost, 7Post, Reddit, the independent mechanic forums, the people who bought them for $90,000 and the people who bought them for $9,000. And they agree on exactly one thing. This car will make you feel like a king on Tuesday and hand you a $4,000 bill on Thursday. The question is whether you can handle both. But here's the thing that surprised me, and this is the part most channels skip. A lot of these owners wouldn't trade the experience for anything. Not the ones who knew what they were getting into. And that distinction between the prepared buyer and the bargain hunter is what this entire video is about. But that's not the expensive part. The expensive part is which engine you pick. Because on these cars, the engine code doesn't just decide the repair bill, it decides whether you're having a good year or a terrible one. Let's start at the beginning. The E65, that's the 2002 to 2008 generation, the Chris Bangle era, the controversial one. And honestly, the controversy about the design aged better than the car itself, because what people should have been arguing about wasn't the way it looked, it was the way it broke. This was BMW's most ambitious 7 Series. First generation iDrive, first fully electronic trunk, first digital instrument cluster, and all of that complexity in 2003 software running on 2003 hardware in a car that was built to be replaced in 5 years. 20 years later, those electronics are the single biggest source of headaches for anyone still driving one. The engine options are where it gets interesting. The N62 V8, that's the 745i, and later the 75i, it's a naturally aspirated V8 that sounds beautiful and drives beautifully and eats valve stem seals for breakfast. The seals harden from heat over time, they crack, and the engine starts burning oil internally. Not leaking on your driveway where you'd see a puddle, burning it inside where the only sign is blue-white smoke on a cold start and a Mobil 1 oil level that drops a quart every 1,000 miles. The fix? You're pulling the heads off a V8. An independent shop will quote you somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000. The BMW dealership? North of $8,000. And that's if nothing else is wrong in there. Which, on an engine with 120,000 miles, there usually is. If you owned one of these, you already know exactly what I'm about to say. An owner in Georgia bought an E65 750i for $6,800. Clean Carfax, 112,000 miles, Alpine white over cream leather. Beautiful car. He said the first 3 months were the best driving experience of his life. The ride quality, the way it ate highway miles, the way people looked at it in parking lots, all of it. Month 4, the valve stem seals went. Month 5, the transmission started shifting hard. He spent $4,200 at an independent BMW specialist in his first year. And when I asked him whether he regretted it, he said, and this is the part that sticks with me, he said, the car cost me $6,800 to buy and $4,200 to keep. That's $11,000 for a year in a flagship BMW. My neighbor's spending $600 a month on a Honda Accord lease. Same money, different experience. He kept the car, but that's a guy who understood the deal going in. A lot of buyers don't. The F01 2009 to 2015 is where BMW cleaned up the electronics and made the interior feel like a proper luxury car again. The iDrive works. The seats are extraordinary. The ride quality, especially on the long wheelbase F02, is genuinely in Mercedes S-Class territory, and the depreciation on these has been absolutely brutal, which means right now in 2026, you can pick up a clean F01 750i with 80,000 miles on Carvana for somewhere between $12,000 and $18,000. That's a car that's stickered at $95,000. But here's where the engine code changes everything, because the F01 came with the N63, BMW's Hot V twin-turbo V8. And if you watch the B58 versus N55 video, you already know that engine codes tell you more about your ownership experience than model names ever will. The N63 and the 755 is the same fundamental architecture we covered in the N63 video, turbos sitting inside the V, cooking everything around them. Oil consumption, valve stem seal wear, turbo oil feed line leaks that cost $2,800 at an independent shop because the labor to reach them is where the money goes. The BMW dealership quotes $8,000 for the same job. And the F01 added its own party trick, the mechatronic unit in the ZF 8-speed transmission. When it goes, and on the 750i it does, you're looking at $1,800 to $2,500 for the repair. And there's no warning light. The first sign is a hard shift on a cold morning, and most people drive right past it because it goes away when the transmission warms up. 6 months later, it doesn't go away anymore. Drop your generation and your mileage in the comments. I want to see the pattern. Now, and this is where I think people get the 7 Series wrong. Let me tell you why owners love these cars. Because they do. Despite everything I just said, the forums are full of people who wouldn't drive anything else. And that's not Stockholm Syndrome. There's something genuinely special about a 7 Series when everything is working. A long wheelbase 750 Li on the highway at 70 miles an hour is one of the quietest places you can sit in a moving vehicle. The sound insulation is better than most luxury apartments. The rear seats recline. The air suspension absorbs expansion joints like they don't exist. An owner in Connecticut described it as the closest thing to flying first class without leaving the ground. And honestly, having read a few hundred of these posts, that's not an exaggeration. It's a sensory experience. The way the door closes, that heavy, vault-like thunk. The way the ambient lighting wraps around the cabin at night. The way 445 horsepower moves 4,500 pounds with absolutely no drama at all. You roll the windows down, you get on it, and that twin-turbo V8 opens up with a sound that makes you forget every repair bill you've ever paid. And right now, a clean F01 750 Li with 75,000 miles on CarMax is about $17,000. That's the price of a loaded Honda Civic. And it doesn't drive like a Honda Civic. Would you still buy one? Yes or no? Comments. I'll read them. The G11 2016 to 2022 is the modern one. And this is where the story changes, because BMW did something smart. They put the B58 in the 740i. The B58 is BMW's best modern engine, turbocharged inline-six 320 horsepower, and, this is the important part, a reliability record that's genuinely in Toyota territory for a turbocharged European engine. The forums on 7Post and BimmerPost are remarkably quiet about B58 failures. No oil consumption threads, no class action lawsuits, no customer care package. Just owners doing oil changes with Liqui Moly every 7,000 miles at their independent shop for about $150, and the engine just keeps going. So if you're shopping for a 7 Series and you want the flagship experience without the flagship repair bill, the G11 740i is the answer. A 2018 740i with 60,000 miles is going for about $28,000 on Carvana right now. That's a car that's stickered at $87,000. Your insurance through Progressive or GEICO runs about $240 to $280 a month for full coverage. And the annual maintenance. If you stick with the inline-six and find a good independent BMW specialist, is realistically $1,200 to $1,800 a year. That's not cheap, but it's predictable. And predictable is everything when you're buying a depreciated flagship. If someone you know is about to buy a 7 Series this weekend, send them this before they sign. But the G11 750i, the V8, is a different story. It's the N63 TU2 and TU3 which are meaningfully improved over the original N63, but they're still a hot V twin-turbo V8 with turbo oil feed lines and valve stem seals sitting in the hottest part of the engine. The forms are quieter, but they're not silent. An owner in Texas put 40,000 miles on a 2019 750i X-Drive in 2 years. His first year cost him about $2,200 in maintenance at an independent shop. Oil changes, brake fluid, a coolant hose that cracked. His second year, air suspension strut went on the front left. That's the one repair that hits every 7 Series eventually, regardless of engine. The strut alone was $1,400 installed. The compressor was showing early signs too. He sold the car at 62,000 miles because, and this is the math that matters, the depreciation had already cost him about $42,000 from what the original owner paid, and the maintenance was starting to accelerate. He traded into a Lexus LS, said he misses the way the BMW drove every single day, said he sleeps better, and honestly, that might be the most accurate one-sentence summary of 7 Series ownership I've ever read, but that's not the only car crashing in value right now. If you think the 7 Series depreciates hard, wait until you see what's happening to the X7 and the XM. That's a whole other conversation. So here's the buying guide. If you're going to do this, and a lot of you are because the prices are too tempting to ignore, here's what the owners and the independent mechanics agree on. The E65. If you buy one, buy the 2006 or later facelift. The pre-facelift 745i had the worst of the electronic issues. Budget a minimum of $3,000 a year for maintenance. Get a pre-purchase inspection from an independent specialist who has ISTA diagnostic access, not a generic OBD scan, the full BMW ISTA, and walk away from any car without documented service history. An E65 without records is a gamble you will lose. The F01. Avoid the 750i unless you genuinely understand and accept the N63. The 740i with the N55 inline 6 is a much safer choice. It's not as fast, but it's not going to hand you a $5,000 bill at 80,000 miles either. Check the air suspension. Have someone watch each corner while you start the car from cold and listen for the compressor. If it runs for more than 45 seconds, something is leaking. And always pull a Carfax and check whether the car was a lease return. Most 7 Series are, and lease cars tend to have been maintained on schedule because the leasing company required it. The G11, the 740i with the B58 is the one. It's the sweet spot of the entire lineup. Flagship luxury, bulletproof engine, and a price point that's dropped enough to be genuinely compelling. Find one with a clean Carfax, 60 to 80,000 miles, all services documented at a BMW dealership or a reputable independent. Budget $1,500 a year for maintenance. And get the air suspension checked because that's the one system that doesn't care which engine you have. It's going to need attention eventually on every 7 Series. Here's Daniel's call. The BMW 7 Series is not unreliable. It's expensive. And those aren't the same thing. Unreliable means it strands you on the highway. Expensive means it works perfectly and then sends you a bill that would make a Mercedes owner wince. The purchase price is the deposit. The maintenance is the mortgage. And the people who love these cars, genuinely love them years later, hundreds of thousands of miles later, are the ones who understood that deal before they signed. That's what we do here. The real numbers before you sign. And speaking of signing, 2 cars. Same price range, one German, one Japanese. The BMW 3 Series and the Lexus is. Same money, completely different ownership experience. One of them costs almost nothing to maintain. The other one is the best driving experience in the segment. That's the next one.